right. Stephen Cordeño, KOR The Sports. We're here with Bernardo Osuna. Man, I got kind of hyped in here today with Janibek and Bentley. Bentley bought a few people over the pond for sure, and Janibek's people were out there too, being loud.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the amount of people that came out to support Denzel Bentley. It was actually pretty cool because, a lot of times you hear about fighters, leaving their country and going elsewhere and just being all alone, and that's not the case for Denzel Bentley. He brought his crew and they made a lot of noise, so it's going to add to a really great fight atmosphere, and Janibek's got his crowd out here as well, so it's going to be a fun night on Saturday night here at the Palms.
Yeah, and we got Seniesa, the first time on ESPN with Top Rank, just a very dynamic fighter at minimum weight. What do you want to see from Seniesa kind of with this portion of her career now with you guys at Top Rank?
I just want to see her shine. I mean, I think, being away for, the better part of 11 months since last December, there's going to be a little bit of ring rust, but she's got the right type of fighter in front of her in Jasmine Villarino. She's going to come in and she's going to make her work from the jump, and I think that's what, is going to bring out the best in Seniesa Estrada, because Seniesa's a very active fighter. Once she lets her hands go, it's on, and I think having a fighter like Jasmine in front of her who's going to demand that from her is going to make sure that ring rust gets shaken off quick, and she's going to know that she's going to fight from the jump. So I think that's going to be an exciting fight, and just the upside for a fighter like Seniesa Estrada. That's what excites us at ESPN about her making the jump over to our company and fighting for Top Rank, because we see what she's capable of doing, the excitement she brings. Women's fighting's had a stellar 2022, and to have her be here with us in the latter part of the year, to help us close it out, it's going to be really good for her. She understands what this fight means for her career, and I think it's a really good marriage. Golden Boy did a great job building her up, and now it's up to us to help her get to that next level and get her those unification fights. And it's always hard when you have small fighters. It took Humberto Chiquita Gonzalez and Michael Carbajal to put the little guys on the map and to make them millionaires. And I think Seniesa, if she gets the right matchups and we get those big fights, when you throw that many punches that rival what men throw in that same weight class in 3-minute rounds, then that gets fans excited, and she's got that type of style.
Yeah, man, it's been a great year for women's boxing. Maybe the women's boxing may have outdone the men this year, because they fought the fights, right? Katie fought Serrano, Michaela, Baumgartner, Shields, and Marshall, yes, thank you. Yeah, man, it's a great time for women's boxing. Just talk about the latter part of that. The men, couldn't get it together with some of them, right? Spence Crawford. What was your kind of just reaction as a boxing fan? I'm sure you're kind of like the rest of us, just disappointed to hear it.
I'm frustrated. I mean, because that's what holds boxing back. It's like, we love the sport and we're hardcores, and the reality is this: boxing has a hardcore fan base of 300 to 600,000 fans who are going to buy anything and we're going to support anything. But the reality is, for boxing to continue to shine and to grow, it needs those crossover stars that people on the street care about. What made Floyd great? What made Oscar De La Hoya great? What allowed millions of tickets and pay-per-views to be sold when McGregor came across? It's the fact that people on the street know these guys. And unfortunately, as much as we love Spence and Crawford, they can walk down Fifth Avenue in New York and nobody's gonna know who they are, or a very limited number of people, and I think that's what boxing needs right now. And that was a star-making fight. The Spence Crawford fight is one of those that, even if you miss the first one, you're going to be around for the rematch and maybe for the trilogy fight, because those are the type of fights, when you're talking about, for me, that was going to be a fight to crown the number one undisputed pound for pound champ. Like, whoever won that fight, no doubt was going to be the number one pound for pound. Those guys are bad. I mean, they're both talented and they're both at their peak, and the fact that we risk not seeing that is horrible for the sport, and I think I'm tired of the guys fighting on social media. Like, that does no good for the sport. Like, let's get in the ring, because the sport, it's not dying, but we need these type of fights to keep it going, and the women are setting the tone for the men. And you know what? That's not to say we didn't have a great year, because men's boxing had some great fights this year. We're gonna have Chocolatito and Estrada 3 at the close of the year. We're gonna have Naoya Inoue fighting for undisputed against Paul Butler. I mean, boxing did a lot of things right this year. Let's not, because the biggest fight didn't get made, because Joshua and Fury didn't get made. Let's not forget what did happen in 2022, because sometimes we kind of, as boxing fans, we look at the glass as half empty, and this is a 3/4 full year. I think when we look back at the end of the year and we reflect on what boxing did, we're gonna say we had a lot of great fights, but we didn't get the fight that boxing needed, and unfortunately, that's gonna be the sour taste in everybody's mouth at the end of the year.
Right. No, you're right though, because there were some good fights in the beginning of the year. It's just, unfortunately, like you said, it's the fight, and it's kind of has been the fight for a while. So,
and maybe we just have to say it's not going to happen, and then be pleasantly surprised if it does. But we may have to just come to terms with, hey, Spence and Crawford don't want to fight each other, because after Spence left Top Rank, that was supposedly the reason that it wasn't happening. It was Top Rank was in the way, blah blah blah, and now we're seeing that was not the case. So now who do you blame? There's no one to blame but the fighters. You know why? Because when fighters want fights, they make them happen. We just saw it with Caleb Plant and David Benavidez. You know what? And I'm tired of everybody waiting on that Canelo payday. Go fight those fights. Charlo, go get in there in the ring with somebody, because you're a hell of a fighter, but you need to prove it. You can't just be waiting on that one payday. And that's what I love about Plant and Benavidez, because that's going to be a great fight, that the winner of that fight is legitimately going to have the respect of the fight fans, and people are going to start clamoring for that Canelo fight. And you know why? Because they did it in the ring, and everybody else is waiting on the sidelines, and that's what boxing needs. We don't need Tank and Ryan on social media. We need Tank and Ryan in the ring. We need them to man up and say, yo, sign this. And we need Crawford and Spence to go to whoever they're going to go to and say, yo, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with not having this fight. And it's not good for boxing when both guys are looking at it like, I don't need Spence and I don't need Crawford on my record. You do need each other, because that's what makes legends. Because both guys are ultra talented. All these guys I mentioned are ultra talented. Like, are you going to take control of your career and say, make that fight? What does it take to make that fight?
And now, that was perfectly put. And now we might even have someone. It sounds like it's Spence Thurman. Thurman can mess it all up, because Thurman is has been inactive for a while. Obviously, only fought Barrios this year, but his only losses to Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah, when you look at Keith Thurman, I'm a huge Keith Thurman fan. Why? Because when PBC started, we had some fights with them, and we had Keith Thurman fighting on our air. We had him in his hometown over there in Tampa. Dynamic fighter. That was ages ago, man. At the end of the day, I love Keith Thurman. I respect what he's done, but I would rather have seen, Boots Ennis get a shot. I would rather have seen Virgil Ortiz get a shot, and that's at Crawford and at Spence. The Avanesian fight is just as, it's even worse than Keith Thurman if you look in terms of level of opposition. And there was great fights to be made, so there's no excuse for those guys not fighting the guys we all want to see. Because as fight fans, it's like, we want to see big fights. We want to see good fights. We want to see competitive fights, and we want to see how good can Boots Ennis be. I want to see how good Virgil Ortiz can be. I want to see how good Stanionis can be, because he stepped aside to allow, Spence to fight, Uga. So at the end of the day, there's great fights to be made. Stop making fights that don't need to be made. I get, that WBC mandated the Spence fight. They could have easily mandated Boots. They could have easily mandated Virgil. They could have mandated, and it's the business. I get it. It's the business, and somebody said, this is the fight we want to make. Let's make it. I understand it. But we want good fights as fight fans. And Spence gets more of a pass because if you look at his fights, he's been fighting big fights. I think at this point with Terence Crawford, he needs a big fight. He needs a name on his resume, and he needs to jump back in there with the big dogs and do what he's capable of doing, because nobody doubts that he's capable. Nobody doubts that he's, top pound for pound talent. It's just like now we want to see it against the big dogs.
Yeah. Bernardo, you said it perfectly, brother. Let's go out with that one, man. Tell the fans where they can follow you and see what you're working on.
Osuna ESPN on Twitter and Osuna ESPN on Twitter and Osuna.Bernardo on Instagram, and just excited to be calling the fights here for Top Rank Boxing on ESPN, and got a big year closing out for you guys, and 2023 is going to be even brighter with a lot of really good fights on the horizon.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.